Good afternoon and welcome to the Rotary Club of Edina. I'm Sam Thompson and I'm proud to be your 66th president. We're coming to you live from the Edina Country Club and also on Zoom. We have pre-registered 63 people live and 15 on Zoom. And we're slowly getting back to what's normal. No masks and name tags. All right. I want to give a special welcome to our guests today. We're very excited that you're here and you have joined us. For those of you new to Rotary, we are a global network of 1.2 million leaders and problem solvers united to take action to create lasting change across the world. And to give you a better idea of what Rotary does, I'd like to show you a very short video.
Possibilities are all around us. Everywhere we look, we see opportunity. We see potential in unexpected places. And when we share our ideas with others, we know they'll see it too. And bring new perspectives, lend unique skills, and take action in the communities all around the world that we call home. When people come together, that's when real change happens. Like transforming an old bus to feed hungry children, or providing life-saving equipment to those who need it most. From fighting disease to rebuilding schools, we turn what we see into what we've done. We are people of action.
Okay, and our club meets every Thursday right here at the Edina Country Club over the lunch hour. We are the largest club in the district with 163 members, and there's actually 66 clubs that are in our district. And we're very active, volunteering both locally and internationally. We volunteer through 45 committees, and our newest committee is our Race and Equity Committee with Sylvester Thomas, who is leading that, and it's part of our membership committee. So yes, we're consciously working to become more diverse and inclusive, and this year we've had 7 new members, and I'm proud to say of that, 43% or 3 of them are people of color. So our efforts are working, and we are people of action, like the video says. And as people of action, we volunteer within 7 areas of focus, and they are promoting peace, fighting disease, providing clean water, saving mothers and children, supporting education, growing local economies, and protecting the environment. Quite simply, we want to make our community a better place to live. And as our guests today, I hope you like what you see and will plan to return and visit us again very soon. With that, I'd like to give some member updates. Sad to announce the passing of fellow Rotarian Sandra Krebsbach's mother. Just happened this last week. Please keep Sandra and her family in your thoughts and prayers. Kayla Beehler just started a new job this week, and she's working at Global Point Senior Living in Golden Valley. It's the sister property to Village Shores where she worked before. And she said she's loving it. She had received a promotion, which is great. She's now Director of Marketing. And she's able to stay as a member of our club because they do have residents from Edina that stay there. And her quote is, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." And we like to give updates on how businesses are doing within our membership. And Bjorn Freudenthal, it says his business is booming. His business is New Spaces. He told me they are on fire. And what they do is they remodel all types of projects. He's seen many of the in-home office projects with the hybrid model now and people working from home. And Rotary in the news. Tonight is Rotaract's Spring into Summer kickoff, and I hear it's going to clear up later on. It's their picnic. It's at Wooddale Park, and it's from 5 to 7. And Rotaract would be our young professionals, 18 to 30. So if you know any employees or any family members, please let them know about this event tonight. And also, we have our Guatemala water project. Our members are there right now. They've been there. They left last weekend. They're coming back this Saturday. 10 of our members. And they're delivering 675 water filtration units scattered throughout the villages. And it's part of a $27,000 grant that we provided with the district. Plus, they're also there as part of a $36,000 grant with hospital beds at the hospital there. So it's great to see what they're doing. And you couldn't have a water project without enjoying the water. So they found the falls. And the soccer balls actually were provided by the Edina Soccer Association and Krista Johnson. And it sounds like they just love the soccer balls. Okay, a couple birthdays this next week. Happy birthday, Arthur and Joel. And assisting off podium. Carlin Pedici is our greeter today. Scott Blake is our Zoom greeter. Scott's right up at the table here. Front desk, we had a last-minute substitute. Mike Martini is doing it. And photographer, Mark Jessen, right up front here. And AV support, Mark. All right. And AV support is Scott Blake. Okay, and now if Hannelore, Brucker could come up for the invocation pledge in the four-way test.
Good morning, all. Division, unrest, and war are our daily worry. Therefore we pray. May it be your will, Holy One, our God, that you erase war and bloodshed from the world and in its place draw down a great and glorious peace, so that nation shall not lift sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Rather, may all the inhabitants of the earth recognize and deeply know this great truth, that we have not come into this world for strife and division, nor for hatred and rage, nor provocation and bloodshed. We have come here only to encounter you, eternally blessed one, and so we ask your compassion upon us, raise us up by what is written. I shall place peace upon the earth, and you shall lie down safe and undisturbed, and shall banish evil beasts from the earth, and the sword shall not pass through your land. But let justice come in waves like water, and righteousness flow like a river. For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Holy One, as the waters cover the sea. So may it be. And we say, Amen. Amen. We pledge the allegiance to the flag of the States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it be the goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bridget Hallstrom, and I'm our membership director for the Edina Rotary Club. And I'm very excited today to have so many guests. And in the interest of time, we're going to ask that you hold all applause till the end, and that when I call your name, that you stand up and remain standing. So today with us, we have District Governor Tom Gump. We have Dick Crockett from the Morningside Club. So if you want to stand and remain standing, thank you. And then we've got from the city quite a few people. So we've got Carolyn Jackson, we've got Rizzy Karam, we have Katie Lux, Stephen Kartak, we have David Denfield, MJ Lamon, Stephanie Hawkinson, Heidi Lee, Chad Milner, Lisa Schaefer, and Jim Hovland from as well. Yes, our mayor. And then we also have other Rotarians as well with guests. We have Catherine Gump, who has Jasmine Stringer, and Tommy Beavis. We have Ryan Wilson has Tanner Feek. Ryan Wilson also has Michelle Livingston. Oh, Livingston. Thank you. And they are our grant recipients from the Treehouse, so thank you for joining us today. We'll hear a little bit more about them. And then we have Gitu Sharma, who is going to be a potential new member here. She's submitted her application for membership, and we really appreciate Raj for bringing her to our club. So welcome, Gitu. We also have Eli Gruenendijk and his guest, Elmer Gelgerheist. Gotta love the Dutch names. And then lastly, we have Stela Center joining us. So thank you all, and let's give them a round of applause. Thank you all for joining us.
Okay, I'd like to invite up Stela Center. If you could please come up. She's with Wall & Partners to share information on the George Floyd Memorial.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for this invitation today. I have a lot of connections with Rotary. I was a recipient of the Ambassador for Peace Scholarship, which enabled me to receive a graduate school degree with a whole lot of support and a whole lot of exposure to Rotaract in Costa Rica, which is where I went to get my degree. So I've been to many of these gatherings and always just love the warm welcome. So thanks for that. So some of you may be familiar with Wallen Education Partners. We were founded by Win Wallen, who was the CEO of Medtronic in the 90s, and Maxine Wallen, who's still living, is very involved with our program. And so we have in our program currently, I'm a former scholar myself, so I was a scholarship recipient from a couple decades ago now, but currently in our program we have about 1,200 students who are receiving 4 years of financial support, as well as all types of different services to make sure that the students not only begin college, but actually get their degrees and go on to successful careers. So we support students with financial need. About 85% of our students are students of color, and about that same number is first-generation students as well. And so we've been doing this for about 30 years, but this was our first time to have financial support from Rotary, and we were very, very excited about this. With the horrible events of last year, with the murder of George Floyd, that did inspire a lot of action on parts of folks throughout the city. And so University of Minnesota Club was the one that kind of led the effort to make sure and to fundraise from several different Rotary clubs to enable us to support an African American student throughout college. And so Gabby is the recipient of that scholarship. I do want to mention that there were 8 clubs who participated, and Edina gave one of the largest gifts. So thank you so much for making this possible. And so Gabby is a freshman in college. She's doing well. She is likely going to be pursuing a degree in sociology with an eye on kind of focus on social justice. And so now that she's in our program, the likelihood of graduation is much higher because she'll just have the resources that are needed to remove all the systemic barriers that our students unfortunately face. So we'll keep you updated on how she's doing. First year, so far so good. Unfortunately, COVID has been very tough in a lot of different areas, but she's on track. She's meeting with her Wallen advisor regularly, and she's very grateful to have your support. So thank you all so much.
make this quick so we can get that photo off the screen for you all. On behalf of the Local Grants Committee, I am proud to present to you one of our local grant recipients, Edina Treehouse. Treehouse is a wonderful organization that I think provides an important service to teenagers in our local community. As many of you with parents of teenagers know, this has been a very difficult year for them. They've dealt with a lot of challenging, stressful, life-altering events since COVID took hold. And for that reason, I think we need organizations like Treehouse now more than ever. So today I am honored to present to you, to introduce Michelle Livingston, who is going to tell us a little bit more about how our grant is helping Edina Treehouse. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I first and foremost just want to apologize for my attire and how I'm dressed here today. I'm looking out at the audience and seeing all you good-looking people with your suits and dresses. My dad would be rolling over in his grave if he saw me showing up here with a t-shirt and a hat. But I want to reassure you this was intentional, okay? Not to disrespect you guys, but we have been at middle schools all day working with kids, and I had to make a decision this morning if I was going to try and impress you guys or if I was going to try and impress the students. And we all know with the cancel culture these days that go with trying to impress the students. So I ask for forgiveness. I'll make it up to you guys later. But we are super honored to be here. I'm not familiar with Edina Rotary, but we do have strong relationships with the Rotary from the organization, our organization in New Hope, from which I came from. I was there for 10 years. Love you guys. You guys were the only organization that could get me up for a 7 a.m. meeting on a Friday. And so if that doesn't tell you how much I love you guys. But at any rate, I was told to come up here, make it quick, talk about the impact Treehouse has had and what your money is going to go towards. I figured, you know what? You don't want to hear me talk. You want to hear from one of our students because the truth is really in the pudding. And so I'm going to show a brief video of the impact that Treehouse has had on a student named Naya, who I've been mentoring for the last 7 years. And then afterwards, if you guys have any further questions and want to know more about our organization, Tanner and I will be here ready to answer questions. Would love to chat with you. So if you guys could start the video, that'd be great.
When I wake up, I feel helpless a lot of the time. It's hard for me to get out of bed sometimes. I worry about how I'll make it through the day. Depression, honestly. Sometimes it can lead to substance abuse. Sometimes it can lead to self-harm. Even now, it's like if something goes wrong, like my first instinct is to like cut, you know, and it's a hard habit to break. The first time I came to Treehouse, it was the time that I first felt loved, first felt safe, first felt at home. They were loving me when I was ashamed of like what I was doing. And it's really like the most amazing thing ever to have people like that that love you regardless of what you're doing, and even love you even harder when you're going through it.
Hey, all right, tree what? Treehouse! Tree what? Treehouse! Tree what? Treehouse! All right, welcome to Treehouse! We're so happy to have you. Treehouse is a place where kids come who are struggling in their life with various issues. We're just loving the kids and being a friend. And, you know, fortunately, oftentimes that's what people need. The Naya that I know now is just confident, more confident in who she is. She's so encouraging to people. Every kid that comes here finds a friend in Naya.
Oh, it's your birthday! You're easy to love. It's easy. It's easy. do feel hopeful. Hopeful for the future, hopeful for the next generation of Treehouse kids, hopeful for myself, you know? Treehouse is family. Treehouse is love. Treehouse is home. Treehouse is my life. Treehouse is my life.
Hi there, I'm Catherine Gump, and I am delighted to introduce and induct Erica Allenburg into our Rotary Club today. I first got to know Erica 4 years ago when she ran and was elected to the Edina School Board. Erica's leadership, thought process, hard work, and calm demeanor through that process really was inspiring. As I have gotten to know Erica over the years, I'm even more impressed and know that Edina is very fortunate to have her leading our school board. It was clear to me that Erica would be a great Rotarian. After years working in advertising and GE and marketing, Erica has devoted herself to supporting and improving our schools over the past few years, both as an active volunteer and now by chairing the school board. She is truly someone who lives by the motto, service above self. Erica, it is now my honor to formally welcome you to Rotary. I, Catherine Gump, as a member of the Rotary Club of Edina, and on behalf of our entire membership, welcome you as a new member to our club. Please join in the friendship that we share and in the passion that we hold for projects that make our community and the world a better place to live. Rotary is an organization of business and professional people who desire to uphold high professional standards in their vocations. As the elected board chair of the Edina School District, your classification will be community leader. Please get involved by joining one of our many committees. By doing this, you will get to know more of our membership, and you will find the true value of Rotary's motto, service above self. Erica, at this time, I present you with your Rotary pen.
Thank you.
And your membership.
Thank you.
And now we get to hear from Erica.
Hello. I was told I have 4 minutes, so you guys can cut me off at any point. My name is Erica Allenburg, and I am chair of the Edina School Board. This is a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Gainesville, Florida. My career was spent in marketing and advertising, mostly for credit cards and financial services. So I like to joke with people, if you got a credit card solicitation anywhere in the late 90s to early 2000s, I might have had something to do with it. So you can thank me for the junk mail that you got in that time frame. I moved around quite a bit as a child, so I've lived in Edina 18 years, and that's the longest I've lived anywhere in my life. This is my family. So my daughter Ava's on the end. She's in 7th grade and plays softball and trumpet. There's me. In the middle is my stepson James, who's in the Air Force, and he is training in Monterey, California right now. His favorite activities are playing cards. His girlfriend's on the left, and she's also in Monterey with him, and she's training to be a vet tech. My husband Tom's on the end. He works at United Health Group and loves playing cards. He unfortunately is from Minnetonka, but now has enough Edina gear that I accept him. We accept him in the family. So then my son Paul is in 10th grade, and he plays rugby, and he's working on his Eagle Scout right now, so that keeps him pretty busy. So that's my wonderful family, and they keep me very busy. So these are really the babies of my family. So that is Rocky and Spots, and Rocky is very naughty, and I'm amazed that my husband hasn't made me get rid of him. So he's 3 years old, and Spots is 7 years old. So they are my little baby substitutes right there that I spend lots of time with. Being born and raised in Gainesville, Florida. My dad was a professor for 35 years at University of Florida. So you basically are born and bred being a Gator football fan. So that is one of my favorite pastimes, is to watch Florida football, which James Pierce and I have a little rival since he's from Alabama. But I don't want people to worry. I still cheer for the Gophers. So yeah, so we still go to Gopher games, though I won't go when it's a really big Florida game. But don't tell anyone that. So, in my free time, I'd love to practice yoga. I love to travel. I love to garden. Though a funny story, last year when it was COVID, we built a huge garden because we had nothing to do. And now this year, I have this gigantic garden. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it this year. So I'm busy planting my gigantic garden. I like to watch really bad reality TV. I love to read, and then I love to volunteer. Really what attracted me to Rotary was service above self. I really try to live my life that way and have always tried to do that. Having a mom as a teacher, I saw the way that she sacrificed in her life, and especially after my parents got divorced, growing up with a single mom, that was just something that we lived with. And these are my notes, it's like my Oscar speech. But I love the quote, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I think that it's so important that those of us that are blessed with resources and time, that we give back to each other. I think it's one of the most important things we can do as a citizen and a community member, is to give back. I also think that it's one of the most important things I can do as a parent. It's one thing to tell your children to be selfless, it's another thing to act it. And that's what I try to do, is act through my volunteer work, through being on different boards, and just spending my time and taking my kids along so they do it as well. So that's it. That's about me. Thank you.
Oh, very good. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'd like to welcome Erica. I'd like to invite up Theresa Halverson to introduce our program today.
Hello, I am pleased to introduce James and Stephanie Pierce. They are residents of Edina and have 3 daughters. James is a member of the City Council and works in IT and business development at Cargill, where he actually by chance has worked with my husband over the last several years. He serves as a board member on several boards and is a talented musician and voiceover artist. We'll have to hear some of that. Stephanie is originally from Chicago. She operates 2 businesses, StephPierce.com, which is all about bringing amazing, diverse women together in the community and focused on growing and inspiring each other. The second business is KGP Consulting, which leverages Stephanie's HR expertise by supporting businesses and maximizing the power of their talent. So welcome to James and Stephanie Pierce.
Okay, so hello. We're so excited to be here and chat with all of you. I just want to say before we get started, James and I don't do a lot of this together, and so he has given me 75 little, don't do this, don't say too much, talking to the mic, Zoom is on, you got the first 3 slides. So I'm like, okay, thanks, no pressure. So thank you for having us. What James and I thought we might talk a little bit about is equity and inclusion are conversations and topics and words that a lot of people are using right now. And we just thought, from our perspective, we might share why we think it matters. A lot of the work that I have done, both now and then I spent the first 24 years of my career, which was essentially all of my career at General Mills, where we really spent a lot of time early on talking about, thinking about equity and inclusion. But I think it is important sometimes to step back from the words and talk about why it actually matters. So today, first we'll just introduce you to who we are. I whispered over to James, I'm like, Erica's slides are like really good, so you're gonna get to see a little slightly different flair from the Pierces. And then we'll just talk about self-awareness. So as a part of what I have been doing, particularly since the murder of George Floyd, is working with organizations large and small to really think about their diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. And what I almost always start with leaders is self-awareness. Like, it's great to get on the journey and want to do stuff, but you do have to step back for a minute and really think about, where do I personally stand? What does this work mean to me? Because if you're running a business, if you have a family, where you really stand and what it really means to you will come out, regardless of the words that you use. And so we really talk about understanding you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then James will take you through some statistics. One of us, speaks from the heart, the other uses data. And so he's going to talk a little bit about the kind of the data behind why it matters.
Next time, I'll start.
Okay, so this is our family. As Theresa mentioned, James is on City Council right now, and I just have to say, our family, our daughters, we have 3. Olivia is 19, and she is a freshman at Northwestern in Chicago. Jamie is 16, and she is a now driving, Lord help us all, sophomore in high school at Edina High School, and then Caitlin, arms up in the middle, is 10, and she's a 4th grader at Normandale. When James said he wanted to run for city council, there was nobody more excited than those 3 girls. They were so proud to know that their dad was going to be doing this, so proud to see all of the signs up, to recognize who he was and what he was doing, and the fact that he wanted to make this commitment. And it wasn't that he was an African-American man wanting to make this commitment, but he was their dad wanting to make this commitment. And that was what got me over the hump of saying, okay, let's do that. So we have 3 girls. You can see their pictures there. And then we, too, have a COVID puppy. His name is Teddy, and he is 1 part naughty and then 3 parts sweet. So I thought I would talk a little bit about our friends. And I show this slide when I do diversity, equity, and inclusion work, because what's interesting about these pictures, for those of you that can see them, is it's a pretty diverse looking group, right? So I have a set of friends here in Edina. We hang out. It's awesome. The vast majority of them are white women. We have friends that we travel with that we've met here when we moved to Edina. And then we have a community of African American friends that we spend time with. But if you look at the pictures, it looks relatively diverse, right, when you see what's happening. But I'll tell you, if you look at the picture at the bottom, so it's my bottom left, there's me and 4 of my friends. And it's a, we were at a party, that's why we don't normally look that great. But what's interesting about that picture and what I share with people is, while we are diverse from an ethnicity perspective, from a race perspective, we all have 4th grade girls that go to Normandale, and we live in Edina approximately 2 to 3 miles away from each other. So we talk about a lot of the same things. We come from very similar backgrounds. And so when I talk to people about diversity and really understanding what it means, I really ask them to think deeply about the people that you spend time with. And so while we certainly have some diversity, our perspectives, especially if I use that group as an example, are pretty similar. We're literally talking about the same school, the same age, and the same gender of kids. And so I always start with asking people to think about the circle that they spend time with as we start this conversation around diversity and equity and inclusion and why it matters. Because our circles are changing, especially as I think about my kids, your kids, grandkids, etc. Their circles are going to change a lot. And as an HR person, as I think about people going into for-profit work, if you don't have the ability to speak with people who come from different areas, who have a different socioeconomic background, who come from different countries, who have English maybe as a second or third or even fourth language, it will be exceedingly challenging for you to be successful regardless of the work that you do. And so that is how we kind of begin this conversation on why inclusion matters. And, you know, I like to tell my friends that I'm taking them around and showing their pictures all over.
So I have to raise this a little bit. So why does inclusion matter? So when you look at these photos, as Steph said, it looks pretty diverse. There are probably, I would say, maybe 3 different ethnicities represented there. There's a Bible study group there. There's a couples Bible study group there. It seems pretty diverse. But when you really think about issues of socioeconomics, for the most part, we're all in the same socioeconomic bracket. We are all professionals. And so when you think about you're surrounding yourself with people that are like you, they may look a little different, but really the way they think, the decisions that they make, their rubric is similar to yours. And so I wanted to do something, I think this is interesting. You guys may throw me out when I do it, but I want you guys to all stand up again. And now with this thought of what inclusion really is, I want you to read, this is your creed?
Your four-way test.
Read your 4-way test. I'm going to count to 3 and then everybody's going to read it. 1, 2, 3.
Is it true? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Okay, now take a seat. Thank you for doing that. Now imagine, that's beautiful, the 4-way test. But imagine if you applied that 4-way test to everybody who looks like you, to everybody who's in the same socioeconomic, has the same socioeconomic status. Just for giggles, imagine if this was a room full of white men and they had the same test and they applied that to other white men in the community. Imagine if it was only white women. Imagine for a second if it was all African Americans and we applied the same test, but we only did it to the African American community. That's why inclusion matters. You should have a sense, just as I go through those, that if any of those were the situation, you wouldn't have near the impact in the world if you applied your test, but only to your narrow group of how you're defining being inclusive. And so, how inclusive are we really? I was asked to speak at Cargill some years ago, and I had this neat idea that I would use data. And I came up with this meter, and literally I am sitting down coming up with these questions, and I associated a rating to them, and I thought to myself, oh, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna show everybody at Cargill that they're not as inclusive as I am. And I'm coming up with the questions, and I'm not making this up. We're rehearsing, and I'm reading through this, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I don't have a single friend who's not a professional. That's the first question. Most of my friends from school are the same race. I didn't spend much time trying to learn about other cultures if it wasn't associated with my job, but I didn't think about it that way. Of your close friends, how many are 5 to 10 years older than you or 5 to 10 years younger than you? How often do you spend time with people of another race? And this probably really doesn't count, just so that we're clear. Do most of your close friends look like you? And do most of your close friends share the same socioeconomic status? And so by the time I finished rehearsing to do this presentation, I had a pretty low inclusivity score. And so I came home and Steph and I started talking about what do we need to do to really grow our network in a meaningful way, so that if we want to have a dialogue about, call it the school levy, we could have varying opinions of it. Not so that we can just debate it and argue, but because it raises our understanding, it helps raise how we think, and it helps us become better leaders altogether. So that's why being inclusive really matters, because you need that varying view of opinions. So here are some questions to consider. Do you believe your race is a significant part of your identity? If you do, there's no right or wrong, but if you do, you are probably going to be more likely to associate with people that are the same race, which is going to lower your inclusivity meter, your score. So you may have to work a little harder to bring other perspectives in. How do you think other people view or see your race? How would you define inclusion? We're hoping today that we'll challenge the way you may have thought about inclusion when you came in today. And then we talked about this a little bit, to think about your close friends, and Steph added the piece at the bottom to kind of help you understand who close friends are. It's not going to lunch every once in a while with that one person of color. This is truly the group of people that you confide in, that you go to when you question something, that you go to when you want to raise your critical thinking about a particular issue.
Can I say something? Do you mind?
No. Was that Tommy?
Right? So the only thing I would add, when we do this exercise, what I typically do with the first 3 questions is I ask people to think about, don't give me your answer, but think about, how did it feel to answer these questions, right? Like, how did it feel to think about your race? Because for many people, maybe many of you, you don't think about it. But I remember being in a session and there was an African-American woman who said, I wouldn't think about it as much if people weren't constantly reminding me about it, right? And so her feeling was, I don't know if it's me or if it's just the world we live in. And then to James' point, I do this exercise and I talk about close friends only to make sure, because sometimes, I love people, but they like to cheat just a little bit. And so I'll say to them, if you have a neighbor and his name is James, and when you drive by, you wave when he's mowing the lawn, that's not a close friend. And so I want people to think about, who do you vacation with? And it's not to suggest that if your world isn't diverse, that makes you a bad person. And part of the reason why I like to talk about this is because it doesn't. But it could give you a hint or a clue as to where you might want to do some work, where you might want to think about how is it, or how does my community, being very similar to me, impact what I do, impact how I think, impact my kids, etc.
You should stay.
Okay, so before I knew there were going to be so many of you, and I have to say, so many of you that I have seen on Zoom, but have not seen in person. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like old home. And then Mike Martinez here, who was my boss at General Mills not too long ago. I'm just going to say that, just yesterday. Okay, so what I have typically done, and I'm going to ask those of you who are able to kind of see and read it to just read through it. But I do this privileged and marginalized exercise. And why? Because privilege is a word that when you bring it up in a meeting, in a session, or anything, it causes a lot of angst. People have a lot of feelings about the word. They have less feeling when you attach it to marginalized. It's like kind of brings it down a little bit. But what I like to do is, and I'm going to show you the exercise in a second, is it gives you 20 different characteristics. And on one side, there are characteristics, of each characteristic is listed, whether or not that is considered the privileged part of that characteristic. And on the other side is the marginalized part. And what I ask people to do is count up the number of privileged scores that you have. And then, depending on the group, of course, some people are perfectly fine to raise their hand and say, I got a 14. Other people need to write it on a piece of paper and send it anonymously. It's okay. But hey, James, just if you can show the next one. I'll just show you some. I'll tell you what they say. I'm not going to ask you to read. But it asks for you to think about privileged and marginalized, not just with race and gender. So it asks you to think about things like age. So privileged is 30s to early 50s. So if you're not in that, yeah, right? I'm on my way out of that group faster than I would have thought. Race is white, biological sex is male. I'm trying to get to some other ones, hierarchical level, right? So do you have a title that is meaningful? Educational level, religion, sexual orientation. You can go to the next one. My personal favorite is 13, appearance. So you get to decide whether you think that you are beautiful or not, but I ask people to think about that as well. But your years of experience, some things that we never think about is parental status, right? If you are, I was 38 before I had my first child. My older two daughters are my stepdaughters. And when you, especially living here, if you haven't had a child and aren't married by 24, people are like concerned about you. I mean, they are legit like, what is happening? Or they'll say things like, I'm so proud of you for putting your career first. And I'm like, well, I didn't know that's what I was doing, but okay. But what I ask people to do is just think about these things, but it allows us to think about privilege and marginalized outside of just race and gender. And what that allows us to do is have conversation and dialogue, because at least, very rarely do I have somebody get a 20 out of 20 on privileged, but allows people who typically have not seen themselves necessarily in the marginalized space to kind of sit with that feeling of, I don't know how I feel about that. Whereas some of us have quite a few characteristics that would land us in the marginalized space. But when we think about why inclusion matters, when James and I take time to work with people who either come to us or when we're talking to our girls, we really try to focus and emphasize all the ways that we differ. Now, make no mistake, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you we don't have a special emphasis with them on being African American girls, because we do, and that is important for them to understand. But we also want to make sure they understand all these different dynamics that impact how you're treated, how you're perceived, what you get and what you don't get. And so maybe next time we'll do the whole exercise together. It'll be super fun. I'll bring out I have a whole little kit with flip chart paper. It'll be great. But I wanted to just share with you and let you see what this is and what the exercise is.
So, why does inclusion matter? The privilege and marginalized exercise, I can imagine if we were all blindfolded and I asked, were there things on there that offended you? There would be some hands that would go up. But here's the trick about privilege. We don't associate a weight to any of those. We don't physically associate a weight that a white male has more privilege than perhaps a female does. We don't associate a weight between the races. Because if this is our test, these are our 4 tests, we actually don't care what privilege you have. But what we want is for you to understand whatever your privilege is and leverage that privilege to honor these 4 tests. And that's how we think about privilege. And so it doesn't matter if you're white, versus African American, if we were to take this test and we treated everything equally, we would have a lot of privilege, as would many of you. But the trick is we need to understand whatever our privileges are and then learn how to leverage those to help others. And so the last point, this is the only data slide that's in here. And this is to underscore again another point about why this matters so much. So this is census data. This is from 2010. And for those of you in the back, that blue bar, this is by race. So the blue bar is Caucasian or white. The orange bar is Black or African American. The gray bar is Asian. Then Hispanic is yellow, and blue is other. And so you can see that people that are at least 85 years or older, that's the top bar, and then the ages go all the way down to under 5. And you can see that that blue bar is shifting to the left. And so the bottom bar, so these are people who filled out the census that are ages are under 5, you can see how diverse that group is. And then I have the Z there, and then the pink circle, that's Generation Z, which is from 6 to 24 years old. And they are considered the most inclusive group from a generational perspective in the history of the US. And so think about that. If that group is where most of our workers are coming from, like you could sneak up and say 35 to 40, which is the bar above that. That group is very inclusive. It's very diverse. But most of our leaders are the top 3 bars, and they're not as inclusive. And so again, it really matters for us to face into how can we as individuals become more and more inclusive, because it will definitely drive the way we make decisions. And honoring the tests will be even more impactful than it has been in the past for the Rotary and other organizations. These quotes I mentioned earlier, Generation Z is considered the most racially and ethnically diverse, more diverse and inclusive. And those trends will continue to shift. So what can you do? I think we've hit a lot of these. I don't know where we are on time. I think we're almost done. So we thank you. Yeah, stay up here. We thank you for your attention. We live in the community, so lots of you know how to get in touch with us if you have questions or if you want follow-up. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
James and Stephanie, we're all part of Rotary because we care about the common good. And I think all of us as human beings have wrestled this past year, especially with what does it look like to be more equal and equitable in our society. So thanks for being here today, and thanks for speaking to us and helping us through that a little bit. Rotary is a global network of 1.2 million problem solvers who unite to take action to create lasting change to better our world. In honor of your presentation, we will make a donation to Every Meal, an organization focused on providing weekend and other food gap programs to over 10,000 children in the Twin Cities area. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Next week is Amanda Brinkman talking about Small Business Revolution, and that's the show she has. And looking ahead, we have on June 2nd, Vocational Happy Hour, and June 15th is our virtual leadership series. And Rob Breeding will actually be the speaker that day. I want to thank you for joining us live and on Zoom. Stela, thanks for being here. And Michelle and Tanner, thanks so much. Erica, welcome. Nice to have you with us. And all the guests that are here, thanks so much for joining us. And James and Stephanie, thanks for your talk. I'd like to leave you with a quote. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Martin Luther King Jr. And with that, meeting adjourned.